One of the most important elements of a great story is the hook, which is the thing that grabs the reader or the audience's attention, the thing that makes a reader go, or
Because most of your treasure stories have a story behind it. And a person wants to dig into that story and get to the facts of the history behind it.
The other element that makes a great story is tension. Great stories have tension. This often comes in the form of everyone thinks and believes one thing, but I believe something else.
If anybody knew anything about Lafitte, it would be that he was a pirate. But very few people could describe what that meant beyond, attacking ships and stealing the goods that were aboard.
They thought they found it. That was just the start, and they got the wheel and they're going to get the rest of it. But, it didn't turn out that way.
If you guys can prove that Lafitte was even anywhere near that lake messing around, if you even found a wagon wheel that dates to the time of Lafitte, you have accomplished an unbelievable feat. And that's what people are interested in. They want to know, did this happen?
They were getting it away so that they could maybe stash it for a later time until the heat came down. So they were moving it somewhere else. And then they supposedly dumped it into a lake.
And the two circles, that to me looks like a wagon. Can you see it?
People have dived, people have dynamited, they dredged.
I never have thought enough about it to go look for it. I just leave it there.
And all we need is one discovery and prove to them how a pirate or privateer would protect a large quantity of silver.
So there was a lot of activity through there, most of which didn't make it in the history books.
The intersection of folklore and history is an interesting thing, because as you tell it to each person, it's going to be a little bit different.
Why do we keep following the Hendricks Lake story? Why do we keep following it? We keep following it because it's an ongoing thing.
And I could actually picture the scene in my mind of that silver being dumped in. Everything kind of clicked.
They had their last search and didn't come up with anything other than just a wagon wheel, and everybody was disappointed.
If you're going to hide something, you don't hide it in a big, obvious place. You hide it in something tucked away.
Is there something that's going to keep me going back? Yes, there is.
When I first started this research, I started with Google, like most people do. And what Google told me about Nicholas Trammell at that point was that he was a highway robber associated with John Morrell. But he was a frontier businessman and carried on his business in a way that made people ask questions sometimes. Trammell's Trace itself, the road, crossed a half mile to the east of Hendricks Lake, about a mile south of the Sabine River. So even in the late 1890s, a newspaper account described finding the route littered with holes that people had dug based on their own ideas about where the treasure might be. Once Paul Tatum made his attempt in 1884, the story just kind of took on a life of its own.
The Spanish originally owned these silver ingots, and they were being transported on a ship called the Santa Rosa. John Lafitte pirated that ship, stole the ingots, and the wagons were supposedly being moved down the Trammell Trace Trail. And I believe the reason for them having to discard the treasure in a hurry was there were some Spanish soldiers.
I had a lot of questions, like what's the significance of this treasure? Why did he not leave it here in Galveston? Why did he feel this need to travel inland?
There was an early report of a large hoard of Spanish silver that came in to Galveston. I think it's very important to know that there wasn't a lot of places to spend that money.
To even have the ability to get people to dump silver into a lake in the middle of nowhere would take some level of leadership, right? I would never have connected him to landlocked part of East Texas until I knew about the Hendricks mystery.
To think that, oh, but he might have some buried treasure 200 miles inland.
I think the legend as we now know it to this day isn't that much embellished, you know. It's still plausible.
Often legends are these things that are really exciting or fascinating or particularly unique. Kind of human person or human godlike crossbreed, like that just has this power, has this compelling story that we almost can't imagine. You want to believe that these things could have happened.
In one of his efforts on the south end of the lake in the late 50s, Waldrop pulled up an iron wagon wheel rim. Every treasure hunter really needs to have some proof of some kind, something that says, see, it's really true.
The legend captured inspired him. And I guess his life, what he did, kind of inspired me, even though I never met him.
I had in my mind back during that time that it was wagon loads of silver bars.
Stories, legends, folklore, it's how we connect as people, right? And I think without that, without stories to share, without legends to follow, without tales that excite us, how boring is life? It adds color to life. It's like that's what this provides us. It provides us an escape, something to think about, something to try to solve, use our minds. It's all healthy, I think, up to a certain point.
And Pete Walker pulled out a big case side buster pocket knife and told him, said, go ahead, said, I'll cut your throat before you get it out of your holster.
Mel Fisher was somebody they thought was crazy. He eventually found the Atocha and the Santa Maria, which are the two biggest finds to this day.
Now here we sit 200 years later, so completely different from the place that he found originally.
I think it would confirm to find a Lafitte treasure that yes, he was very successful and he did stockpile his goods and money.
And if the legend was tied to wagons being pushed in and here's the rim from a wagon wheel, it had to make some connections.
That was just enough proof for him and others to continue their search.
And everybody's bringing up pieces that could possibly fit the story.
I think that's true with you guys too in Hendricks Lake. I think every story that lasts a long time is because the mystery itself is solid. It's historically based, and people want to know, is this true?